I'm going to start out my sourdough starter today with a base of 50 grams of rye and 50 grams of water, which is 100% hydration. The reason I'm starting out with rye flour is it's easier to maintain. It doesn't go into a slurry like a wheat flour when you forget about it. It's a little bit easier to stir because it almost has no gluten. And it's also very forgiving in the amount that you feed it, or if you forget about it for a day. Rye flour is a little more forgiving. So when I'm starting out my culture, I want to start it out with something that is a little bit more forgiving if I say don't get the adequate feeding schedule on it. Honestly, you can make a starter with any kind of flour as long as it's grain based. Here I'm in about the third day of feeding, and every feeding up until this point has been exactly the same. I've kept the amount of old. I increased it the first day. I simply just fed it, and then I divided it down to 150 grams. And so I have 150 grams of flour, 150 grams of the old mother, and 150 grams of water in this container. And that's giving me 100% hydration. Again, that's equal parts of water to new flour is 100% hydration. If I were, say, doing 60% hydration on 150 grams, it would be 90 grams of water. It's just 60% of however much you're adding. That's a side shot of what it looks like before I stir it, and it's quite pretty. Just going to mix it up here a bit. And you can see it's at 100% hydration. It's fairly easy to stir. Doesn't really, it will lump up some. You can grab the container. I was holding my phone with one hand, but grab the container, you can thin it out. And here it is. This is it, about day 6 in the feeding process. 100% hydration still. You can see from where my hand was at that it's very liquidy. On the side of the container that I'm feeding it in right now, I wrote 18 grams, and that was the tare weight of the container. So what I'm going to do here is just actually remove this down to the point where I am at 150 grams on the scale plus the 18, around 168. And then the other part I'm putting in a bowl to the side because I've already done enough feedings to this that I just want to show you that there's really no remnants of the rye flour left in it. It's pretty much just bread flour and water at this point, and it made a very nice culture. It has an amazing smell. So I'm at 158. All right, 168. That's 150 of the old mother plus the 18 grams. Scales are jumping. Okay. Plus 18 grams for the tare weight on the container itself. And you can see there's really no remnants of rye flour left in this. And to this, I'm going to add 150 grams of bread flour. And so you'll see this jump up to 318, but remember it's because of the, or 318 because it's the tare weight on the cup. And this is where I reduced the hydration for the first time down to 60%, which at 150 grams of new flour, 60% of that is 90 grams. So adding that to it brings me to a grand total of 408. As it was at 318, 150 grams of mother, 150 grams of bread flour, and plus 90 grams and 18 for the tare weight. So I'm going to mix all this together. Chopsticks make it really easy to mix this. Again, I'm holding the camera, so I can't really hold the cup steady. First time I tried doing this without a towel underneath it, it was just, cup was flopping around everywhere. It was a mess. And this is me coming back about 4 days later, and I fed them one time from that 60% that I had, and the one on the left, the one on the right was fed at still the 60% hydration level. That was 100 grams of mother, 100 grams of bread flour, and 60 grams of water. And the one on the left, after one feeding at 100% hydration, is already back to being a little soupy again. And you can see the difference. And this is where I'm going to split them up into 3 different hydration levels for the first time. And I have the one here. This is my 100% hydration. So there's equal parts of new flour and water. And being added to that is an equal amount of Old Mother. At this point, I'm going to start my 80% hydrated Mother. It's already 100 grams of bread flour, and then I'm going to add to that 50 grams of my Mother that's at 100% hydration. And then I'm going to add 50 grams of my Mother that's at 60% hydration to give me 100 grams of Mother that has a combined hydration of 100 plus 60 divided by 2 to give me 80. Don't worry about the math. It's working out for me. So the Mother that I'm adding is half of one and half the other to give me the weight. And I'm going to add to that 80 grams of water, which is 80% of the 100 grams of new flour that I added. You get to do a little bit of math with this stuff. It's fun. Alright, so here I am. I'm mixing the different flours together after I broke them down into 60, 80, and 100% hydration. And this is me feeding the 60. So it's 100 grams of flour, 60 grams of water, give or take a gram. It's fine. You can be off by a gram or 2. No big deal. Or 3. And then I'm adding the Mother to it. And you can see the 60% hydration is so much thicker. The 100% hydration you could pour out, and 60% hydration almost will defy gravity after it sits for a little while. But in just a moment, you'll see the webbing difference of the different hydration levels. There's the 60, the 80, and the 100% hydration not quite mixed together yet. There's a difference in volume size because there is less water in the 60 and then less water in the 80 than in the 100. The 100% hydration mixes very smoothly. I'd say if you're this is the 80% hydration, a little lumpier. And this is the 80%. Fight me a little bit. And this is the 60% mixed up. It's just a hot, sticky mess. And this is after 24 hours of them feeding. You can see the fermentation, the bubbles, the webbing. Look really nice. There is an increase in volume in all of them, except the volume increase kind of seems like the opposite direction. The weight of the water itself is really pulling down that 100% hydration. But you see that webbing where all of the gas and fermentation taking place inside of that. It's very nice. You move over to the 60% hydration, which has even more webbing, even more fermentation taking place. So Those are the sourdoughs. I've got one, again, 100% hydration, 80% hydration, 60% hydration. These guys have been alive in their current 60, 80, 100 state for about a week after about a week of feeding and being split off. My suggestion to you is that if you make your sourdough starter and you want to feed the culture and make it strong, go with the 100% hydration, something that looks a bit like this. And then that's good. And when you mix, just try to use the same containers. Chopsticks work really well to mix the items up. And have fun with it. Any questions, please direct them to me at any time. I'll be more than happy to answer anything.